Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call, and this is Barbara serving as your host today, and Brother Pete is here as your co-host.
I just want to welcome you all also to this important material. Thank you.
Now, the title today is The Third Day Resurrection. Was it the 16th, the Feast of First Fruits? Well, there are scripture facts. One, Yeshua died on the evening of Passover. And I'm going to let you look up these texts for yourself. 2, Yeshua died around the 9th hour of the Passover day. That would be 3 p.m. in modern day time. 3, Yeshua died on an evening before the Sabbath, or as it was drawing towards the Sabbath. 4, Yeshua rose after the Sabbath at dawn on the first day. So Saturday Sabbatarians are adamant about the 3 days and 3 nights as a sign of Jonah because their entire justification of consecutive Saturday Sabbath hangs on it. So Saturday Sabbatarians attempt to place Yeshua's death on a 72-hour period because they are believing in a Wednesday crucifixion. And they're forced to interpret the sign of Jonah passage, that's in Matthew 12:40, 72 hours. They are forced to interpret that quite literally.
What Saturday Sabbatarians believe, and this is apart from what lunar Sabbatarians believe. Wednesday, the 14th of the first month, that's Pesach, Yeshua dies buried before sundown. Thursday, the 15th of that first month, first day of unleavened bread, and they call that a high or special Sabbath. Friday, the 16th of the first month, is the second day of unleavened bread. Then Saturday, the 17th of the first month, the third day of unleavened bread, they call that a fixed regular Sabbath. And then Sunday, the 18th of the first month, Yeshua is resurrected. By the time the women came, Yeshua had risen.
Okay, then there's a chart here below showing Wednesday, a Gregorian Wednesday with Abib 14, and Thursday Abib 15, and so on down to Sunday as a first day of the week. And here it is enlarged so you can see it better. And starting out on a Gregorian Wednesday and placing Passover on that day, and placing the first day of the week on a Sunday. So because the moon is so predictable, it is possible to precisely calculate lunations thousands of years ago, as well as years into the future. So Saturday Sabbatarians, counting consecutive weekly Sabbaths all the way back to 31 AD, have placed the crucifixion on a Gregorian Wednesday because Passover had to happen at the time of a full moon, and that had to be AD 31. So you'll see over here on the left, this is from a Seventh-day Adventist chart of the 70 weeks of Daniel. You'll see it has to be 31 AD. And if you count Wednesdays all the way back to this full moon on AD 31, you have a Wednesday if you're going to go with Gregorian dates. So this is an example of the sign of Jonah calendar. And this appears to be the only way they can retain the traditional Saturday Sabbath and Sunday resurrection on a Gregorian calendar. 72 literal hours, 3 days and 3 nights leads to a second kind of Sabbath belief. Unfortunately, a Saturday Sabbath and a Sunday resurrection creates an additional and unbiblical weekday Sabbath and an additional first day during the Passion Week as seen here. So we know that First Fruits is wave sheaf, and that's always on the 16th, and that's from Leviticus 23. And we know that First Fruits is never on the 18th. This is if you use a Gregorian calendar. And here are those verses in Leviticus.
Leviticus 23:5. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. And verse 11, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
Okay, so this timeline of the crucifixion showing that one must step outside of the given and normal reading of Leviticus 23 to insert an extra day. Well, here's 119 Ministries. They have a nice ministry, and they also are Saturday keepers. They're not using the lunar calendar, but they do keep feasts. So anybody that keeps feasts is looking at a lunar calendar. But anyway, they have also placed the Passover on a Gregorian Wednesday and First Fruits on a Gregorian Sunday. So which calendar did Yeshua keep? Did he keep the calendar in the heavens or a Gregorian Saturday? Well, at the time of Yeshua, there was an 8-day Roman calendar, and Saturday did not exist. What? Yeah, that's breaking news maybe to some of us. Continuous weekly cycle has been proven false. And we thought Saturday went all the way back to creation. But the weekly cycle has been interrupted and changed by many days, and the whole world didn't adopt the Roman Gregorian calendar till as recent as 2016 even, and some in the 1900s. So the Julian calendar, that's what was around at the time of Yeshua. It began in 46 BC, and Julius Caesar separated the months and weeks from the moon and made a continuous 8-day cycle. And in AD 321, Constantine created a compromise calendar, and he blended the Hebrew idea of a 7-day week with the Julian concept of a continuous weekly cycle, and added the veneration of the sun god from Mithraism to create the Roman calendar that is used today. And there is Pope Gregory XIII, and he started the Roman Gregorian calendar in 1582. And that is the calendar that the whole world is using now. So this is a quote from Michael Rood's newsletter.
Michael Rood saying, following Pesach is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, a 7-day feast during which nothing is eaten that contains leaven. Being 7 days in length, this feast always includes a weekly Shabbat or Sabbath, and that would be on a Saturday, according to them. The day after that Sabbath, quote, the morrow after the Sabbath, Leviticus 23:11, we are told to bring the first fruits of the barley harvest and raise it as a wave offering. This is the day of first fruits. He offered himself up for our iniquity. It was Wednesday. As the Bible states in Matthew 12:40, he was in the ground for 3 days and 3 nights. He was raised on the Sabbath, and then, as the day of first fruits began, he raised the first fruits, saints whose graves were opened at his crucifixion, and presented them as a wave offering in the heavenly temple of Yahweh. This was the fulfillment of the Feast of First Fruits.
Okay, and there's a quote there. And many of you have watched the Jonah Code. I watched it. I learned a lot from it. But I was learning about the feast days and things, and I listened and heard him say that year that Yeshua died, he said wave sheaf was on the 18th. The first fruits is always the 16th day of the month. And as Brother Pete already read, the 14th day is Passover, the 15th day is the Sabbath, the beginning of unleavened bread, and ye shall wave the sheep before Yah to be accepted for you on the morrow after the Sabbath. So here we have the 14th, the 15th, and the wave sheaf is the morrow after the Sabbath, on the 16th. It is not on the 18th. And also, we know that Yeshua was the first fruits. Paul confirms that in 1 Corinthians 15:20. So 3 questions. I have 3 questions for you, and I hope you'll answer these honestly. Question number 1. Do you believe that the Feast of First Fruits is a type and shadow of the resurrection of Messiah? Question 2. Do you believe that the Feast of First Fruits is a type and shadow of the third-day resurrection of the Messiah? Question 3. Do you believe that the sheaf is to be waved on the morrow after the weekly seventh-day Sabbath during the Feast of First Fruits? If you answered yes to all 3 questions, then there is no way that you can count the weekly seventh-day Sabbath as the 7th day on a Gregorian calendar, which would be a Saturday. And if you answered yes to all 3 questions, then you must count the Sabbath from the new moon every year, which is an impossibility on the Roman Gregorian calendar.
Someone may ask, how is that? The suffering and death of Messiah fulfilled the Pesach, which falls on the 14th day of the first month. If you believe that the Feast of First Fruits, the 16th, is a type of the third-day resurrection of Messiah, then you agree that the sheaf must be waved the 3rd day after the Passover sacrifice of the 14th, which would be the 16th. Whatever fixed number of days one believes there are between Yeshua's death and his resurrection, they must always remain in the same fixed number of days every year, which again doesn't fall on the same day on the Gregorian calendar every year. Fixed dates don't change year to year on Yahweh's calendar, and planetary weekday names were non-existent in the 1st century.
So scripturally, weekdays are numbered numerically 1 through 7, or 1st, 2nd, 3rd, etc. And it would serve us well to think in these terms and not in the terms of the Gregorian Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. And this helps us to better understand what the scriptures teach and avoids the confusion that weekday planetary names bring with them.
If you believe the sheaf is to be waved on the morrow after the weekly 7th-day Sabbath as a type of the resurrection, then you agree that the Sabbath is a fixed number of days from the Pesach or Passover on the 14th to the day of the resurrection every year, whether it be the 16th, 17th, or 18th. But the moment you tie a fixed number of days to an event on the Gregorian calendar, like, quote, day after the Sabbath, end quote, that is Saturday, you have an irresolvable dilemma on any calendars other than Yah's. The dilemma is that the date of the weekly Saturday Sabbaths change every month. The date of the resurrection must also change every year.
So the only way that Passover, the resurrection, and the weekly 7th-day Sabbath can be fixed dates every year is to count them from the new moon. You cannot count the Sabbath as a 7th day on a Roman calendar and get it to come out to a fixed number of days from Passover every year. And to do so is to try to impose the modern Gregorian calendar with its planetary weekdays into Elohim's calendar, that is in Genesis 1:14-16. And over here on the right, we'll show a Gregorian calendar with the Passover dates plastered on it, and it's on a Gregorian Wednesday. We began on Tuesday, but this calendar begins on Wednesday on Gregorian calendar. But on the biblical calendar, Passover is always preparation day, the 14th. So the modern Gregorian calendar did not exist at that time of the Passover of Yeshua, and out of place, out of chronological order, to think of the Passion Week in terms of the Gregorian calendar. However, on Elohim's calendar, close examination reveals the truth of the lunar solar calendar and the lunar solar Sabbath. It exposes the unscriptural, uninterrupted cycle of Saturday Sabbath as found on the solar-only Gregorian calendar. So whether you believe that the Messiah rose the third day, inclusive reckoning, as the scripture states in these 7 verses, or if you believe that Yeshua rose after 72 literal hours, the sign of Jonah, Matthew 12:40, whether you believe either one, inclusive reckoning or the sign of Jonah, it is irrelevant because you still must wave the sheaf a fixed number of days from Passover, and that fixed number of days is 3 days. Anything other than 3 days will not result in a type of third day resurrection after the Sabbath of the 15th. So yes, Yeshua rose on First Fruits, and that is the 16th of the first month. So much of this was taken from the article, The Sabbath Debate Boils Down to 3 Questions, and that is on our website on the articles page. So to access more information about the Creator's calendar, please go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. And I'll leave the link for this article below also. So please like if this was a blessing to you, and please share it with your friends that love Yeshua. And we want to share it with our friends that are still keeping Saturday Sabbath or even a Sunday Sabbath. So please share with others so that they will know more about the biblical calendar and the resurrection on the first fruits.